Dear students, welcome to Darasa Online. My name is Mr. Darcy. I teach English language. The lesson is on participating in a debate. How can we participate in a debate? This lesson is under the major topic, which is using appropriate language content and style in speaking. So we want to develop our skills in as far as making arguments before people, and as we are trying to argue or persuade people in which position that they should take, and or in which way something has to be understood. A debate is a formal discussion which people take sides to express their views or opinions in support or oppose to a given subject. Or you can talk about a debate being a formal discussion of an issue at a public meeting. So we are talking about a formal discussion, and we are talking about a formal talk that people enter into a conversation as they are trying to argue, that some people take one side and others take another side. So as they are trying to argue, and especially in public when other people are watching, that is what we refer as a debate. So we can even think about what happens at the parliament to our members of parliament when they are discussing different issues. That is a debate. So as long as we are in a society, debate is something which is inevitable. That we find ourselves, that we look at things in different perspectives. That some people might look at it in one way, and others might look at the same thing in a different other way. So you'll find there are some controversial issues that occur between two sides, and of which these two sides have to come together to see which side wins over the other. And when that happens, this is what we refer as a debate. So, in order to understand how can we go through to see how we can participate, or how we can be able to participate in a debate, we'll go into this lesson, and the lesson will be guided by a question which reads, how can you participate in a debate? How can you participate in a debate? Now, in answering this question, maybe you should ask yourself a question like, have you ever participated in a debate? Can you tell how it looks like? If the answer is yes, in fact, on question number 1 I made, the one that I say, have you ever participated in a debate? And if the answer is yes, can you tell how it looks like? And if the answer is no, of course, you can't tell how it looks like. So it is within this lesson that would be in a position to know how the debate looks like. So in fact, at the end of this lesson, I expect you, students, should be able to participate in a debate. That you should be able to use this knowledge as you are participating in a debate. So, the question here comes, how important a debate is? A debate is very important because it helps to develop students in critical thinking. Critical thinking in which ways? In various aspects. That debate sharpens your thinking. What do we mean here? Because at times, when you are participating in a debate, we'll see it later how it goes, that it gives you a challenge. That how fast can you think when you are challenged by the members of the floor and or the co-speakers? But it also develops confidence. You know, standing in front of people is something that it needs a person to have a confidence. So it is at that time, when you participate in a debate, it gives you a confidence that you might be able to stand before many other people as you present and or as you argue your ideas. And above all, a debate improves your solving problems. Or we can rather say it improves the problem solving skills. That what happens? That at time when you are in a debate, as I said, there will be two opposing sides. And in that case, when those two opposing sides argue, why are they arguing? Actually, they're trying to see what could be the consensus. So the side which win, it is at that particular time when a person now has to think that this problem has been solved in 1, 2, 3 because of the argument that had been developed. Having seen this importance, then we see now it is very important for us to see and or develop the skills that can help us to participate in a debate. So the point here is, how are we going to participate in a debate? So we want to look at the things that you have to apply, or the things that you have to consider when you are to participate in a debate. Now, before it comes to the actual participation of a debate, then there should be a preparation of what are you going to debate for. Remember, we said a debate is an argument that has to take place in a public for other people to see. So the first thing that an organizer has to do is to select the debate topic. The topic that talk about the issue which is common and that can be debatable. You cannot select over a topic of discussion which at times you think about that topic cannot be debated. Remember, we are trying to see how we can make students, how debate can make you being a critical thinker. So at that time, we have to think about an issue which is possible for you students to think about how you can develop the arguments coming from the opposing and or from the proposing. At times, some people say anything that, so long as it is in the society, can be debated. Because people view things in different perspectives, as I said. Because people view things in different perspectives, as I said. When you look at something from this angle, another person look at the same thing on a different angle. So when we are talking about selecting a debatable topic, it is because we want to develop the skills to use students that at the end of the day, you'd be able to participate in debate. When a debate topic has been selected, then it has to be displayed. Displayed for the participants to read that debate topic. So when they have it in mind, they have to go and research. Where? They have to go to books, if possible, to read what people say about the topic. And or sometimes even to make reference to some individuals for them to know what do they know about this topic. And so they will have some points, which some of them, of course, will be opposing. Others definitely will be supporting. So when you are researching or when you are trying to collect different points over the subject, that one will help you at the end of the day to be convinced in which side should you take. So we are talking about taking position here. That you decide at the end of the day, are you going to talk about the topic as you oppose it and or as you support it? Now, based on what you have collected, that will make you to be a speaker on one of the sides. And having that, that will give you a ticket and telling others that I want to participate in a debate as a speaker in that matter. So, when you are given a chance to go and speak, how does it go? Of course, there has to be the way on how, when you are appointed to speak, you should follow. Of course, there should be a way that you should follow as a speaker in a debate session. Remember, as we said, a debate has to take place in a public, in a meeting. So, who kind of people that we expect to have in a debate? I'll come to it. Now, I want you to know what are the things, what are the elements that you should consider in mind when you get into the flow. So, these things that you should consider are, one, you should think about audience identification. You should acknowledge the presence of the people who are in the meeting. And again, definitely, you have to open up the communication system. I'm talking about making greetings here. You can't just start talking without greeting them. It's important. But thereafter, there comes, what are you going to say? So at that part there, which you talk about content, it is divided then. You have the introductory part, of which you have to introduce yourself. When you finish off your self-introduction, then you have to introduce the motion. You have to restate the motion. And then you have to definitely have to say on which side are you going to argue at the introduction, so that people should know from the very beginning that are you going to oppose and or are you going to support? I'll come to it when it comes to its appropriate place. And thereafter, you come up with your opinions, with your points that argue either for or against the topic. And end of the day, you simply finish up. You finish it by giving thanks to the people who are listening. I have mentioned things to consider in mind when you get into the flow. I talk about audience. So this is like aspects or areas that your concentration will be when you're trying to, when you're getting into the flow. Now, how do you go about each of these? When you are appointed to go, to participate and or to contribute what you have, when you reach at the flow, first of all, you have to acknowledge the presence of those who are there. Now, at this point here, you have to acknowledge depending on their status. And no matter who had attended, maybe there should be an invited guest. But in our normal debate sessions, we expect an audience that the people whom we expect to have in a debate session, always, one has to be the chairperson, the one who controls how a debate session goes, the one with a final decision over the matter that takes place during the session. You have the secretary. A secretary is a person who takes down all the points that were made by speakers, whether opposers and or proposers. He makes those points down separately, the points for the opposers and the points for proposers. And it is for him, those points will later be synthesized and, of course, being judged upon the supporting evidences to see the validity and or which points or which position had won the debate. That is the secretary's duty. But another person we have and or we expect to have is the speaker. This speaker, his or her task is to say something about the motion before others try or before others start arguing. It's like trying to elaborate. He's not going to give the point for or against, but rather trying to say it or paraphrase that motion for people if they misunderstood it, so that they should come back to their senses to know, okay, what does the motion want? And so if you are opposing it, how should you go about it? And or if you are proposing it, how should you go about it? That is speaker. We have a timekeeper. A timekeeper's task is to manage time. You know, when speakers are given a flow, they are given a limited time for them to speak. And so it is this timekeeper's task to check with the clock. If the allotted time is 5 minutes, let's say, then he or she must make sure that all speakers are given the same time, so that we should see how these people can present themselves. So that is the timekeeper's task. So it depends on the modality as whether he or she has to switch something on for it to ring, for a person to be alerted that his or her time is over. So he had to step aside, leave a chance for other speakers. That is the task for a timekeeper. But again, we have other members like principal speakers. I'm talking about principal speakers, the main speakers who had prepared to speed up, or who had prepared to talk over the motion. These speakers could be of different, they could be of two types. We talk about speakers who are prepared to oppose the motion, and speakers who had prepared to propose the motion. People who support and others who oppose. And these are the speakers who had been given prior information over what they are going to argue for. We'll come back to it. Then we have members of the flow. We talk about other participants. Now, if a debate maybe takes place at school, so we expect there should be other students apart from the main speakers watching. Remember, we said this is a formal discussion that takes place in a public meeting. So in that case, we expect to have other members in the flow, whether them being invited and or not. Sometimes some other people think that there are other people, whether you invite them and or you don't, whether they are involved and or they are not, then they think it's important for them to attend that occasion. We call them ladies and gentlemen. These are sometimes some other people call gate crashers. That whenever they see people have a meeting, they would want to go and see what is taking place there, even if they are not invited for. Oh, these are the audiences that you have to identify. Now, after audience identification, you have to identify them in a hierarchy of order. That, thank you, chairperson, the secretary, the speaker, the timekeeper, principal speakers of both sides, members of the floor, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you see, how did I go? You start with the one with high status, the chairperson. So your audience identification had to go in that way. Let me repeat it. Thank you, chairperson, secretary, speaker, timekeeper, principal speakers, members of the floor, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that is what and how the audience identification has to go. Now, just after that, you come to the salutation. How do you salute? It depends on the time when the debate session takes place. If it is the morning, of course, I know you know how you should greet it. But sometimes some people could simply say, okay, I salute you all. So in that case, you have opened up the communication system. You have opened up the communication process. Now, just before you come talk about the point that you have, then you have to introduce yourself. Who are you? In front of you, I'm so and so and so. You talk of your name. And you talk about the title if you have it somewhere. Now, if it's a school, you simply talk about a Form 6 student or Form 4 student. If it's a school, you talk about a Form 4 student or a Form 3 student, rather. You can decide either to talk about you are in arts, science, or commercial subjects. Simply, you want people to know who are you. But thereafter, again, you start introducing the motion. That you are standing in front of that flow to oppose and or to propose the motion. And which motion now? You have to restate the motion. Now, a motion is a statement with which some people will agree and some disagree. So there will be a motion, or there will be a statement being given. As I said, the selected topic sometimes. That motion will be presented to people for them to read and research, as I said. So at that point, when you are introducing it, you are in fact not making it for the first time, but you are just rather trying to restate it. That you are going to argue against what? You are going to argue against a motion that states, you are going to argue for the motion that states, you mentioned the motion. That's how it goes. Now, if you think the speaker did not make it more clear, you can decide to clarify it based on what are you going to say. Because remember I said, when you are there, you have to tell people that in which position are you going to argue. So you can decide to restate the motion depending on what and how are you going to argue. And of which it could give you an advantage of coming up with your points that they're either proposing and or trying to oppose the motion. Now, normally, a motion is selected to talk about common things, and or it is proposed depending on within the area or within the agreed structure and rules. You know, you cannot think and or propose a motion that has some technical or it needs some technical knowledge about that, because the people who are going to argue, they are common people. So if you think about selecting a motion and or a motion that deals or that needs some technical explanation, of course you might not have a balanced discussion, because there would be some people who are well informed about that and they're the ones that can argue for or against, but others who might take the other side might not be in a position to do the same. So we have to think about the careful selection of the motion that is going to be made. Now, after you have introduced yourself and restating the motion, which also trying to show on which side you are, then that's where you come down mentioning and or come up with the points that you have developed. That here comes, that we expect as a speaker, when you go for a session, we don't expect you to go with 1 or 2 points. We expect you to go there with at least 3 and or 4 points. Because remember, you are a main speaker by that. You have researched and you had points. Either you researched it through people and or you went to books and or whichever area that you go and collect information about what you're going to make a presentation. Now you have points. Those points that you have, they have to be organized in a chronological order. when I talk about the chronological arrangement of the points, that you have to arrange those points starting with the most important ones. And you come to the list. You know, points that a person may have, you can see some of them, they are very strong points in support of what you want to say. But others, they are not that strong. They are weak, we can say. So those important points, or those most important points, the one which you think they're strong ones, try to place them on top. Or you should start with them, so that you can see the best way how you can win those people on the other side. And you go down looking at which one is a bit weaker than, and so you arrange them in that way. When you mention those points, make sure you come up with some supporting evidences if possible. Why do you have to have those supporting evidence? We think it is important for you to have supporting evidence because you are defending your position. Now, as you defend, then what you make has to be so defensive so that whoever think of attacking it find themselves defeated. That is the reason why we should have supporting evidences over the points that we developed. But make sure when you are presenting them, use simple language, common language that people should understand. Or in other words, make yourself understood. Don't make difficulties for other people to understand. You know, sometimes some other people in debate sessions, they think that using words which are not known to the participants could give them a credit. That's not true. Use simple language, the language that other members understand, so that when the secretary comes up with the summation of the points, then your point should be included there. Because otherwise, if you speak and not make yourself understood, then even the secretary himself or herself might not take down the point. And when it comes to the summary, you might find and you start claiming that my point has not been taken only because you have not made it clear. But as you are doing so, try to see how do you persuade the members of the floor that you make a point. But how do you persuade? How do you convince them to come on your side? Because remember, it's an argument. You're going there for a discussion, two opposing sides. So you need now to persuade those on the other side to be convinced to come on your side. So not only giving a point, but the way how you see the best way you can take them to your side. So here I was talking about, you can either be in opposing and or proposing. So I'm new to trying to say, how are you going to persuade members if you are a proposer? How are you going to take those opposers to the proposing side? And or if you're an opposer, how can you take those proposers to the opposing side? And so, this is when now we have to think. What we normally present, the points, they are in opinions and sometimes are facts. You know, when I talk about opinion, I'm talking about the expression which a person makes for other people to have it, but based on his thoughts and feelings. How do I feel about something? What do I think about it? And after I've gone to books, how does it make sense? And sometimes, of course, we think about other people's opinion, so we can use it as well as our supporting evidence. And especially those people with some special traits. But again, we use facts here. That what truth, talk about it. Because fact, we're talking about statement or expressions which can be verified. That you can go to books and it gives you the truth of it. So at this point here, you can have these two different expressions, that you can use facts, and end of the day, again, you can talk about your own opinion on how you look at, or how you view about that. So that's why we said here that debate, it helps you to give critical thinking. And it makes you to have a judgment and come up with the opinion on how you view at a certain issue. And finally, maybe in the society, you become good in advocacy, trying to convince people how should they look at things in different ways. That is the content part. But remember, you have been given time frame for you to accomplish what you're going to say. So depending on the agreed rule, how many minutes should a speaker speaks? Then try to observe the opinions, the points that you have, and how quick can you present them. And remember, you talk about how you can make yourself understood. Not only presenting them quickly, but also try to make yourself understood by at least by every person there. So it can be done either by proposers and opposers, as I say. Now, if these principal speakers are done, so that is when we think about giving a secretary or a chairperson to decide, should we still have some time to welcome other members from the floor? So that's it. Now, after you are through with the content, then it comes to Thanksgiving. You give thanks to the people who are listening. But under the debate, of course, people normally again go back by starting thank you, chairperson, secretary, speaker, timekeeper, principal speakers of both sides, members of the floor, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your listening, and so on and so forth. And that becomes the end of your time. You allow another person to chip in. And so that turn would go until all the speakers are through. When they are through, what happens? That's why I said the chairperson will see if the time allows for him to welcome other members from the floor to contribute and also say something about their views with regards to the motion or to the topic of discussion. But if time is not, then it's only those speakers who had been prepared to talk on that day. And thereafter, the secretary will be invited. Sometimes, if it is a competing debate, then it's a judge who will be invited to come up, try to summarize what it has been said by speakers of these two sides. Now, based on the argument of what they make, without being biased anyway, he or she will, at the end of the day, announce the winner of that debate. That one side has to win. How many points do each of these sides have? Whose points are stronger than the other, based on the supporting evidence that they made? The validity of the points and opinions that they make. That would give them points to win. And remember, this is a discussion. When you are making points, and as you are going either to propose and or to oppose the other points made, try to challenge the point, not the personality of a person. Because you are trying to confront over the idea, not about the person himself. So I used to see some of other people in some debate sessions that instead of arguing of a point, they're trying to argue and or talk about the personality of speakers of a certain side. That is not allowed. It's not accepted completely. So, as the judge and or the secretary announce the winner, then those who loses should not think about this other side are our enemies. No. Remember, we are confronting over some controversial issues. We are confronting over some controversial issues that we are trying to debate on issues which people look at it in different angles. So we want to see how best all of us can have a certain stand, a certain focus, and on how we can understand something. So we should not at any point look at each other as enemies. So as you are arguing in a debate, at times when you air your ideas, you are trying to convince, you are trying to persuade those others to come on your side. But at the end of the day, you have to shake hands, of course, and try to see who has been convinced to take the other side of the speakers. And after that, of course, it is the chairperson's task now to thank everybody for their participation and finally say a word of goodbye, and that becomes the end of that session. And that's how a debate could take place. Remember, I have taken you to who should be there in a debate. Who should you expect to see? And the process on how you should go about trying to argue in front of the floor or in front of other friends, in front of other members. So this is what and how you should be able to. Now that I have given you the skills, the way on how you can participate in a debate. So it's my expectation. Now, when you are asked to go and participate in one of the debate sessions, you would be able to do that. You should be able to do that. Remember, the lesson is about participating in a debate. And at times, I ask you, have you ever participated in a debate? And I ask you again, can you tell what it looks like? Now, whether you participated or you have not, now that you have the knowledge on how you can participate in a debate. Now, let me tell you, a debate is very useful as it gives you an ability, even at times, to argue before other people when they come up with a point that you look at it in a different other way. And since it is a skill that you need to practice it, you need to organize it, you need to keep on asking when and how you can participate in a debate. Now let me take you through in model questions and let us discuss all together, and of which in particular I want you to see how you can participate in a debate. Now, I take you to one of our questions which reads, imagine that you are the head prefect of your school. Your English language teacher has asked you to prepare a debate. How are you going to organize it? Now, this is one. You are told to organize a debate. Now, at this point here, you have not been asked to be a member to participate. But how can you organize? And here you will be given a title of you being a head prefect, which means one of the things you should act on is to see the kind of a topic that people are going to debate on. You have to carefully select it, and of which that topic has to be familiar, that you know people can be able to debate it. And end of the day, you know that this topic can be researched. When people go for a reading or when people go for reference, they can have points, and end of the day, they can collect the information and finally have their own thought and the feelings that they have as they go to present on that day of discussion. So what you do is to think on how this debate is going to be conducted. And you tell the participants who are going to argue for and who are going to argue against. When you are selected to argue for, then you cannot, because this has not given you the motion which you are going to discuss, or the motion which is going to be discussed or debated. You are trying to organize who will participate, who will be the principal speakers of the opposing and of the proposing, who will be the secretary, who will be the timekeeper, who will be the speaker, who are the members that will be invited. So you're trying to organize, try to see who will be involved and how will it be involved and how will it take place. That is one thing. Now, you being an organizer, now let's see, you being an organizer, end of the day, you'll have to see how this debate takes place. Now, let's go to the second model question and see what does it want us to go through. Now, let's go to the second question. The second question here reads, imagine that you are the student of Mtakuja Secondary School. Your school has been invited for a debate competition in the nearby school, and you were selected to argue as a principal speaker on that day. The motion is, day schools are better than boarding schools. Think of how are you going to prepare yourself for the session and decide the position that you will argue for. Finally, develop your mind. Think of how are you going to prepare yourself for a session and decide the position that you will argue for. Finally, develop your mind. This is a model question. What does this question want? What is the demand of the question? The question demands you to take position, either proposing and or opposing. Try to argue over the motion. And it's like, you say, develop your mind. You thought about it, then develop it. That means you say it on that day. How are you going to make it? Of course, I have not given the participants simply because they are known. So as you start, of course, you identify the audience. Remember, the audience in debate, we have chairperson. That position has to be there. We have seen before, when you are organizing a debate, there should be these leaders like the chairperson, secretary, speaker, and all those other members. It's important that all those has to be. The people whom we are not sure of their attendance, it is the members of the floor. And which, of course, again, there must be people participating as the members of the floor. Now, thereafter, you make a salutation. As you are about now to speak, you finally, not finally, sorry, you again have to introduce yourself, and you have to say on the side that you are going to argue. You restate the motion as usual. What the motion? Remember we said the motion should be a statement that make people agree or disagree. And it should be familiar to both parties. But thereafter now, you have to come up with your points, with supporting evidence. For this case, maybe one of the supporting evidence that you probably go together with the points is you're trying to show whether some certain day schools, about their performance, their discipline, and even the way they participate in a debate. How good are they? And based on that, you can convince other people to say whether boarding schools are better than day schools. And the other side, again, they could come up with their own supporting evidence to show. So as you can find, how many supporting evidence do you have against the idea and against the opinion and against the point that they made? Maybe one of the side would win, depending on the argument made and the decision that the judge and or the secretary had made in the summation. And finally, as normal, you thank the members. You give thanks to the chairperson, secretary, and all other members who had participated in that debate. And with this now, it is the expectation of this lesson that you have now acquired the skills of how you can participate in a debate. Mind you, a skill is not something that you can develop in a day. And once you are told about a certain skill, which at the beginning I said, this skill is very important to you students, because it develops critical thinking and it sharpens your thinking. And also it gives you confidence. Then it is a skill that you need to practice. And you cannot just practice by yourself. Of course, you can make a rehearsal of how are you going to present, but end of the day, you have to be to the actual scene. Because if you practice by your own, it might not give you a confidence, because at that time, you are just alone. You need to go and stand in front of other people to see how can you build up your confidence. So as a saying goes, practice makes improvement. Then as you keep on practicing, you find yourself improving day after day. Thank you very much for listening. Keep on watching Darasa Online.